Deborah Denise Brown. In the summer of 1984, Deborah Denise Brown, along with her partner Alton Coleman, embarked on a cross-state murder spree that spanned 5 states: Illinois, Indiana, Michigan, Kentucky, and Ohio. Together, they were responsible for the brutal deaths of 8 victims. Brown, born in 1962 as one of 11 children, had a history of developmental delays, with an IQ ranging between 59 and 74, and had suffered head injuries during her childhood, which may have played a role in her actions. The method employed in the murders was consistent across all the victims: ligature strangulation, a signature technique that became the hallmark of their crimes. The pair's violent rampage terrorized the Midwest, leaving a trail of tragedy in their wake. In the aftermath of their arrest, Brown was convicted for her involvement in the murders. In Ohio, she was sentenced to death, a sentence that was later commuted in 1991. However, in Indiana, she received a separate death sentence, where she remains the only woman on the state's death row. Currently incarcerated at the Ohio Reformatory for Women, Deborah Brown serves her time for her role in the murders, having been involved in one of the most infamous cross-state murder sprees in the United States. LaShawn Ternice Harris. On October 19, 2005, LaShawn Ternice Harris, a 23-year-old former nursing assistant, committed a horrific act that would forever change her life and the lives of those around her. Struggling with paranoid schizophrenia, Harris took her 3 young sons, Trayon, aged 6, Toronto, aged 2, and Joshua, aged 16 months, to Pier 7 in San Francisco Bay. In a heartbreaking sequence of events, she dropped each child into the cold waters of the bay, where they tragically drowned. Harris, who had been diagnosed with paranoid schizophrenia, had a history of mental health struggles, which played a significant role in the crime. She had been experiencing delusions and profound distress at the time of the incident, which led to her devastating actions. Despite the tragic nature of her crime, the court determined that Harris was not fully in control of her actions due to her mental illness. She was found guilty of the murders but declared legally insane, meaning she was not held criminally responsible for her actions. As a result of her mental state, Harris was committed to a state mental hospital for life, where she remains to this day. Her case highlights the complexities surrounding mental illness and its potential to lead to violent actions. The deaths of her children, whose lives were cut tragically short, serve as a stark reminder of the profound impact mental health issues can have on individuals and their families. Margaret Ann Allen. On February 8, 2005, Margaret Ann Allen, a woman with a troubled past, committed a brutal crime in Titusville, Florida. Over a suspected theft, Allen murdered her housekeeper, Wenda Wright, in a violent and calculated attack. Allen, born in 1966, had grown up in a troubled neighborhood and had a history of arrests. Her actions on that day would add to her criminal record in the most horrific way. Allen, along with her accomplices, her nephew Quentin Allen and roommate James Martin, beat Wright severely, poured chemicals onto her face, and then strangled her with a cloth belt. The brutality of the crime shocked the community and left an indelible mark on the victim's family and friends. The investigation into Wright's death uncovered the chilling details of the murder, leading to the arrest of Allen and her accomplices. In 2011, after a trial, Allen was convicted and sentenced to death. The jury unanimously voted for the death sentence, highlighting the severity of the crime and the level of violence involved. Currently, Margaret Allen remains on Florida's death row, awaiting the execution of her sentence. Her case serves as a grim reminder of the deadly consequences that can arise from suspicion and rage, and the devastating impact of unchecked violence. Lolita Barthol. On August 18, 1995, Lolita Barthol, a 17-year-old student from Tampa Bay Tech, became involved in a violent home invasion that would forever change her life and the life of Richard Mendez, a 64-year-old floral supply salesman. Barthol, alongside an accomplice, entered Mendez's home with the intent to rob him. However, the situation quickly escalated when a struggle ensued during the attempted robbery. In the heat of the confrontation, Mendez was shot, ultimately losing his life to the senseless violence. Barthol's youth made the crime even more tragic, as she was only 17 at the time. Despite being a juvenile, she was tried as an adult due to the severity of the crime, The case became a focus of debate on the legal handling of young offenders involved in serious crimes. The prosecution argued that the brutality of the murder and the calculated nature of the robbery warranted an adult sentence, while the defense pointed to her age and potential for rehabilitation. However, the jury convicted Barthol of both first-degree murder and robbery, leading to a life sentence without the possibility of parole. On December 19, 1996, Barthol was sentenced to life in prison. She is currently incarcerated at the Jefferson Correctional Institution in Tallahassee, Florida, where she remains behind bars, serving the life sentence handed down to her at the time of her conviction. Barthol's case highlights the complexities surrounding juvenile crime and the legal system's approach to such offenses. The tragic death of Richard Mendez and the consequences of Barthol's actions serve as a grim reminder of how quickly a life can be taken in the heat of a violent act. At just 17, Barthol's future was forever altered by a moment of impulse, resulting in irreversible consequences not only for her, but also for the victim and his family. Jacqueline Annette Williams. On November 16, 1995, Jacqueline Annette Williams, alongside her boyfriend Fidel Keffi and cousin Lever Ward, committed a heinous crime in Addison, Illinois, resulting in the brutal murders of a pregnant woman and her 2 young children. The victims, 28-year-old Deborah Evans, her 10-year-old daughter Samantha, and her 7-year-old son Joshua, were violently killed by the trio. Their motive was chilling: theft of Deborah's unborn child. Williams, born on December 22, 1966, had spent months faking a pregnancy, and her twisted plan was to steal Deborah Evans' baby after killing her. She, Keffi, and Ward carried out the murders with horrific violence. Deborah was killed along with her children, while the 2 surviving children, 2-year-old Jordan and the newborn Elijah, narrowly escaped death. The murder of Deborah Evans and her children was a tragic and senseless act that devastated the family and shocked the community. Williams and her accomplices were arrested and later tried for their roles in the murders. In 1998, Williams was convicted and sentenced to death, reflecting the severity of the crime. However, in 2003, her death sentence was commuted to life without the possibility of parole, and she remains incarcerated in Illinois, serving her sentence for the brutal killings. This case stands as a chilling reminder of the extreme lengths to which some will go to fulfill selfish desires, and the unspeakable toll it takes on innocent lives. The lives of Deborah Evans and her children were senselessly cut short, and their story remains one of the most disturbing examples of murder for the most depraved of reasons. Andrea Hicks Jackson. On May 16, 1983, Andrea Hicks Jackson committed a crime that would alter the course of her life and the life of Officer Gary Bevel, a 29-year-old police officer in Jacksonville, Florida. During an attempt to arrest Jackson, she fired 6 shots at Officer Bevel, fatally wounding him. The murder of Officer Bevel was a tragic and violent moment that left a profound impact on his family, colleagues, and the community. Born on February 26, 1958, Jackson's background and the circumstances leading up to the crime remain a part of her legal story. In the aftermath of the shooting, she was arrested and charged with the murder of Officer Bevel. Her legal journey was long and complex, with Jackson receiving 4 death sentences over the course of several years. However, each of these sentences was overturned by the Florida Supreme Court, raising questions about the fairness of her trial and the application of the death penalty in her case. In June 2000, Jackson was resentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole. She has been incarcerated in Florida ever since. Despite her life sentence, Jackson became eligible for parole as early as 2009, although her parole status remains uncertain. The case of Andrea Hicks Jackson serves as a reminder of the emotional and legal complexities surrounding acts of violence, particularly in cases where the justice system's decisions can shift over time. Officer Bevel's death remains a somber chapter in Jacksonville's history, and Jackson's life sentence reflects the long-lasting consequences of that fateful day. Tavasha Logan. On November 1, 2009, 25-year-old Tavasha Logan, a mother of 6, committed an unfathomable act that led to the starvation death of her 5-month-old daughter, Chantasia Gardner, in Lakeland, Florida. Logan, who had been responsible for her children's care, intentionally diluted baby formula by mixing it with 3 parts water, depriving her infant daughter of the essential nutrients needed for survival. This devastating act of neglect caused Shantasia to starve, and at the time of her death, the baby weighed only 6 pounds, less than her discharge weight from the hospital after birth. Logan's boyfriend, Chanty Gardner, was also charged in connection with the crime. It was revealed during the investigation that both Logan and Gardner were responsible for the infant's suffering and eventual death, though the extent of Gardner's involvement remains a subject of legal scrutiny. The details of the case shocked the community, with the loss of an innocent life due to extreme neglect. Logan was convicted and sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole on July 11, 2012, for the murder of her daughter. She is currently incarcerated in the Florida Correctional System, serving her sentence for a crime that left a family devastated and a young life tragically cut short. This case highlights the horrific consequences of neglect and the vulnerability of children, whose lives can be irrevocably altered by those entrusted with their care. Muriel Bemis. On February 23, 2014, Muriel Bemis, 21-year-old woman from Stone Mountain, Georgia, committed a heartbreaking act that would forever alter her life and the life of her 3-year-old daughter, Layla Bemis. Despite portraying a happy and fulfilling life on social media, the reality behind the scenes was far darker. Following an argument with her boyfriend over text messages from another woman, Bemis's emotions spiraled into violence. In a moment of rage, she suffocated her young daughter with a pillow, taking Layla's innocent life. In the aftermath of the murder, Bemis made a chilling confession to her boyfriend, saying, "I killed her." The sudden and tragic loss of Layla, coupled with the disturbing circumstances of her death, left a community in shock and grief. Muriel Bemis was arrested and later pleaded guilty to felony murder for the death of her daughter. On September 11, 2014, she was sentenced to life in prison for her crime. Currently incarcerated in Georgia, Bemis will spend the rest of her life behind bars, serving a sentence that reflects the severity of her actions. This case stands as a tragic reminder of how domestic disputes, when left unchecked, can spiral into irreversible violence, leading to the death of an innocent child. The loss of Layla Bemis remains a haunting example of the devastating consequences that can arise from unchecked anger and poor decision-making. Yvette Taylor. On February 11, 2012, Yvette Taylor, a 47-year-old woman with a criminal history, brutally murdered her elderly roommate, Theodore Crew, at the Applecross Apartments in Martinez, Georgia. Crew, 63, was found with sharp and blunt force injuries, the result of an assault that Taylor later admitted to, though she denied causing his death. Taylor's background revealed a troubling past, including a 1991 manslaughter conviction related to her brother's death. On the day of the murder, Taylor attempted to cover up the crime by cleaning the scene with bleach and water, hoping to erase any evidence of the violence that had taken place. Despite her efforts to conceal the crime, the investigation uncovered the truth, and Taylor's confession came shortly afterward, though she minimized her role, stating, "I cut him. I admit that, but I didn't kill him." After a trial, Yvette Taylor was convicted and sentenced to life without the possibility of parole in February 2013. This case underscores the tragic outcomes that can arise from violent outbursts, especially when compounded by a history of prior violent offenses. The death of Theodore Crew, an elderly man, reflects a senseless act of violence that resulted in a loss of life and left a community grappling with the shocking events.
She did not become a suspect until the investigators who were talking to her compared with the other investigators who were talking to the other witnesses. And the stories didn't mesh. Timelines didn't mesh. Nothing meshed. So instead of believing that the neighbors and the mama conspired to falsely provide evidence, they figured that it must be the one person conspiring alone to provide help for herself. There is only one answer to the question. Who killed the victim? She sees right.
Latasha Pulum. On March 21, 1991, Latasha Pulum, then just 19 years old, committed one of the most horrific crimes in Chicago's South Side, alongside her boyfriend, Dwight Jordan. Together, they abducted their 6-year-old neighbor, Shenosha Richards, and subjected her to prolonged torture and sexual assault before ultimately taking her life. The brutality of the crime shocked the community and left a lasting scar on the local residents and Shenosha's family. Latasha Pullum, born in 1971, had a troubled background, and her actions that day would forever alter her life. The details of the crime were chilling. Shenosha was subjected to relentless abuse, and her life was cruelly extinguished after hours of suffering. Pullum and Jordan's actions were marked by a level of violence that was both premeditated and cruel, with Pullum later delivering a chilling confession that was described as being made with an unsettling level of calm. The crime was so horrific that a state expert would later describe Pullum as a female John Gacy, a comparison to the infamous serial killer due to the severity and nature of her crime. In 1992, Pullum was convicted of first-degree murder and sentenced to death for her role in Shenosha's tragic death. However, in 2003, her death sentence was commuted to life in prison without the possibility of parole. Jesse Outley. On August 29, 2021 in Syracuse, New York, 22-year-old Jesse Outley was involved in a shooting that claimed the life of Dior Harris, the youngest victim of gun violence in the city's history. Outley and another man had been targeting a vehicle when gunfire erupted, striking Dior as she sat in the back seat. She was rushed to the hospital, but did not survive. The senseless act devastated her parents, Des and Andres, who lost their daughter. Outley was arrested and charged with murder, facing trial in Onondaga County Court. Emotions ran high throughout the proceedings, with Dior's parents addressing him directly. Through their grief, they told him he had stolen their world and that he could never understand the pain of losing a child.
You get to see your people! We can't see ourselves no more!
You don't understand because it's not you. If you had kids, you understand, man. You understand, yo. 4 days before, 15 days before our first birthday, man, clown took our way because they want to shoot up the wrong car, man.
During sentencing, tensions in the courtroom spiked when the judge ordered Outley removed after he appeared to smirk in the face of the family's anguish. When he returned, the judge spoke firmly, acknowledging that no punishment could ever balance the weight of such a loss.
You get to see your people! We can't see ourselves no more!
You don't understand because it's not you. If you had kids, you understand, man. You understand, yo. 4 days before, 15 days before our first birthday, man, clown took our way because they want to shoot up the wrong car, man.
In March 2024, Jesse Outley was sentenced to 40 years to life in prison. Despite his young age, the judge emphasized that his choices had left a permanent wound on the community. For Dior's parents, justice had been served, but nothing could ever bring their daughter back.
I feel great. Such a relief. I don't have to be humiliated. I finally have justice for my baby. Long live Dior, justice for Dior Harris. You know, that's all I wanted from the beginning. I'm upset that it took this long, but it's finally here.
Her death remains a painful reminder of the toll of gun violence in America and the lasting scars it leaves behind. Cynthia Varela. In December 2013, Cynthia Varela Casas was charged in the death of her young son, Omar Varela. Prosecutors stated that Cynthia repeatedly kicked Omar, causing fatal injuries. The tragedy shocked the state and devastated the family. At trial, Cynthia pleaded guilty to 6 counts related to the killing, admitting that she had kicked her son to death. She claimed it was an accident, that she had been trying to discipline him, but her words did little to ease the pain inside the courtroom. During sentencing, Omar's aunt, who had adopted him and his 2 younger siblings, spoke of the lasting trauma the children carried. She read aloud how Omar's sister often asked why her brother could not be fixed and why she could never hug him again. In a heartbreaking moment, Cynthia's own daughter pleaded with the judge to keep her mother in prison, saying she feared her mother might hurt her too.
It's hard to block out now that everything has come to light, how he was treated and what those people did to him, his mom, his stepdad, how they talked to him. And I mean, I can only imagine the worst, and I'm trying not to do that because I have to stay focused for him. It's unreal. I guess to me, I don't feel like he's gone. You know, I feel his presence in my home every day. every day.
The judge ultimately sentenced Cynthia Varela Casas to 40 years in prison and ordered that she have no contact with her surviving children or their guardians while in custody or on probation. Omar's stepfather, Steve Casas, was also sentenced to 30 years. Andrea Bradley. In 2015, 28-year-old Andrea Bradley brought her severely malnourished 2-year-old daughter, Glenara Bates, to Cincinnati Children's Hospital, where doctors confirmed the child was already dead. An autopsy revealed that Glenara had suffered prolonged abuse and neglect. Prosecutors described her condition as unimaginable. Bradley was charged with aggravated murder, but due to an IQ in the 60s, the court ruled she was ineligible for the death penalty. After negotiations, she accepted a plea deal. The aggravated murder charge was dropped, and she pleaded no contest to other related charges. Nearly 3 years earlier, Glenara and her siblings had been removed from the home by Child Protective Services, but were later returned, a decision that would have devastating consequences. While Andrea Bradley's case moved through the courts, the trial of Glenara's father, Glenn Bates, resulted in a jury finding him guilty of aggravated murder. He was sentenced to death for his role in the killing. During her plea hearing, Andrea Bradley quietly answered the judge's questions, acknowledging that she understood the charges and the agreement. When asked if she had anything to say for herself, she offered nothing. The prosecutor later stated that the abuse Glenara suffered was beyond comprehension, and that some people should never be parents, period.
You do have to accept the reality that there are just some people that should never have kids, period. And our challenge is, under the federal and state guidelines that want us to reunite families, is to identify the people that shouldn't be parents and get them out of the house.
Bradley remains in prison, serving her sentence for the crimes that contributed to her daughter's death. Alicia Hallman and Avon Traylor. In October 2023, the community of Detroit was left devastated by the sudden and tragic death of young Deshaun Williams. Investigations uncovered that Deshaun had endured repeated and severe abuse at the hands of his mother, 23-year-old Alicia Hallman, and her boyfriend, 21-year-old Avon Traylor. The abuse took place in their East Side home and left Deshaun with shocking injuries, including a fractured pelvis, critical head trauma, and extensive burns. Family members voiced their deep disbelief and sorrow, unable to reconcile Hallman's loving facade with the cruelty he suffered. His father tearfully remembered him as a cheerful and resilient child who never revealed the pain he endured.
I just can't see nobody doing this to a kid. He was a happy kid. He didn't let on. I don't know if he didn't, want us to know, or maybe somebody threatened him and tell him not to say nothing, but he didn't let on to us that he was in any type of pain, being abused, or anything.
He was always stand-up guy for just like me. It was my mini-me.
Both Hallman and Traylor were arrested and charged with felony murder, first-degree child abuse, and child mistreatment. They were denied bond and held without release while awaiting trial. If convicted, they faced life sentences. Days later, Deshaun's memory was honored at a candlelit vigil. Loved ones and community members gathered to mourn his loss and demand justice, determined that his story would not fade away.
Gina Emanuel. Between 2017 and 2019, Gina Emanuel, a registered nurse living in Miami-Dade County, Florida, adopted 3 young sisters. What appeared to be a gesture of care quickly turned into a prolonged nightmare. Behind closed doors, Emanuel subjected the children to starvation, physical abuse, and repeated confinement. In November 2018, one of the girls, Somaya, fell ill with a treatable condition. Emanuel chose not to seek medical help. The disease worsened, and Somaya died from complications, further aggravated by the abuse she had endured. Authorities began investigating the circumstances surrounding Somaya's death, and by 2019, Gina Emanuel was arrested. Her surviving daughters later took the stand, recounting in painful detail the years of abuse they suffered while in her custody.
I'm not gonna say it was easy. It's mentally exhausting, but it's over.
In April 2025, a jury found Emanuel guilty of first-degree murder in the death of Somaya. She was also convicted of aggravated child abuse for the cruelty inflicted on the 2 surviving girls. During sentencing, family members addressed Emanuel directly. One relative ended their statement with the words, "I wish you well in hell." The eldest daughter, Ayana, stood in court and spoke with strength and clarity.
Don't do the crime if you can't do the time. I'm letting God take this wheel. And with that being said, I wish you well.
in hell.
She told the court she had found forgiveness, though not forgetfulness. Their grandfather spoke through deep anger and regret, expressing his wish to have protected the children sooner, and the pain he carried knowing what they had gone through.
I wish I can inflict the pain that you did to my grandkids every day. I wish I could beat you within an inch of your life every day. It really hurt, and I wish that I could have been there a lot sooner, and that makes me more angrier than anything, to whereas, I wish I could, put my hands around her throat.
The judge, addressing the court, imposed a life sentence for first-degree murder, stating it was the only just outcome.
Life in prison for the first-degree murder. The sentence is the only lawful and just sentence in this case.
Emmanuel remained silent. Her attorneys indicated plans to appeal. George Zapp. In April 2023, George Zapp spent an evening out with 27-year-old Jacksonville singer Charity Huntley. At some point during the night, he handed her half of a Percocet pill. Not long after, Zapp dropped her off outside a local hospital and drove away. Charity later died from an overdose. An autopsy confirmed the cause was oxycodone toxicity. Zapp admitted to providing her with the pill, but prosecutors chose not to pursue charges directly related to her death. Instead, he was charged with delivery of oxycodone, a second-degree felony. At sentencing, the courtroom heard from both sides. Charity's family spoke of the devastating loss. She was the light in their lives, full of energy, promise, and music.
Losing Charity is by far the hardest hit my family has ever endured. She was literally the light that kept us shining.
Her death left a silence they still struggle to fill. Others came forward to speak on Zapp's behalf, describing him as kind, supportive, and someone who never meant harm.
He means no harm to anybody. He is there to help people, to protect people. So yes, that's the person that he is, so.
But the judge made it clear.
I pray that moving forward, no other family has to experience what I've had to experience.
You are going to today become a convicted felon. I am not sentencing him for retribution for Charity.
Everyone knew who she was, so for that, we would just keep screaming her name.
The sentencing wasn't about revenge. Zapp would not be punished as if he had caused her death, but he would still be held accountable. He was sentenced to 2 years of community control, followed by 3 years of probation and 100 hours of community service. The court's decision left Charity's family with more questions than closure, but they remain committed to honoring her legacy and raising awareness about the devastating impact of opioid misuse.
Sean Allen. On August 14, 2023, 37-year-old Sean Allen, after an argument at a nearby bar in Akron, Ohio, drove his SUV down Cross Street, where 40-year-old Lee was pushing his infant daughter in a stroller. Investigators later stated that Allen deliberately targeted Lee, steering his vehicle toward them and striking both father and child. Lee and his daughter died at the scene. During sentencing, the courtroom was filled with family members holding a large picture frame filled with photos of their loved ones. Several took the stand to speak directly to Allen. Prosecutors described Allen as showing no remorse for the killings. Court heard emotional statements like, "We have nothing but memories. We have nothing but screenshots and posters. And he chose to hunt them down like dogs."
We have nothing but memories. We have nothing but screensavers and posters we have to kiss.
He chose to hunt them down like dogs. Why is he eligible? Life is life. By law, he needs to. You got 6 kids, and you okay to sleep at night knowing you ran down a baby and ripped her from a stroller?
Allen was convicted of 2 counts of aggravated murder and sentenced to 2 consecutive life terms, plus 3 additional years. He will be eligible for parole after serving 63 years. Lee's family expressed that no sentence could truly match the loss they suffered, and that Allen has shown no sign of regret since the day of the killings. Tashan Adams Wright. On December 23, 2022, 19-year-old Tashan Adams Wright, along with several others, confronted 19-year-old John Hudson inside the Mall of America during the busy holiday season. Hudson was tackled to the ground, and in the chaos, Wright and another individual opened fire. Hudson was struck multiple times and killed as shoppers fled in panic. One bystander was also hit by a bullet but survived. Within hours, Wright was arrested and charged with second-degree murder and second-degree assault. In court, he admitted guilt to both charges. Despite his young age, the judge emphasized the severity of the crime. calling it an execution carried out in a crowded shopping center filled with families and children. Hudson's family spoke about their grief, while Wright delivered an apology, acknowledging the pain he caused and blaming his actions in part on the influence of violent movies, music, and video games. The judge rejected any claim of self-defense, stating that Wright had participated in a group hunt that ended in murder. In May 2024, Wright was sentenced to 367 months in prison, equal to 30 years and 7 months. He was also barred from ever owning a firearm again, with restitution and fines imposed, and time already served credited. When asked for his final words in court, Wright said, "I want to apologize for the pain and suffering I caused. I know what I did was wrong, and I am sorry. But I understand that sorry is not enough." Judge Paul Scoggin then pronounced the sentence, closing the case of Tashawn Adams Wright and the killing of John Hudson at the Mall of America.
In severance of the victim family, also to the lady got shot. And to the community of Bloomington and the Mall of America, also apologize for the mom and my family. After I was 18, I fully developed to really understand the impact of my actions. I know and understand what I did was wrong, but I accept full responsibility for my actions. I was saying I'm sorry, but saying I'm sorry is not only what I've done. I was influenced by false favorite movies, music, and video games, but I cannot take back my action. I truly apologize for my actions. Thank you, Mr.
So let me start by expressing my sympathies, my condolences for, as Mr. Hudson's aunt described it, the crushing grief that you have to live with every day. I can't wrap my head around this. No one who hasn't gone through what you're going through can. All I can do is acknowledge it. The pain, and it doesn't go away. And I understand that, and I'm truly sorry. I want to at least acknowledge the comment that family members made. I agree with it. It is remarkable that only 2 of the people who are involved in this matter will end up in front of adult courts. I think that's unfortunate, because it fails to recognize, and this I need you to hear, Mr. Adams Wright, that the criminal justice system must take into account the personal characteristics of the persons in front of them. And I acknowledge you're young. But the criminal justice system also exists to punish people when they do bad things. And we forget that as a system at our peril. In crafting a sentence today, I've taken into account the remarkable circumstances of, in the middle of a holiday rush in a major retailer or a retail establishment, Mr. Wright, you and several others decided to hunt someone down and execute. And we've all seen that tape. And there can be no other definition of what happened that day. And your recitation of acting in self-defense that day, you weren't. You participated in the group of people because it is as simple as that. And the sooner you wrap your head around that and understand that and acknowledge that, the better off you'll be. I do, I did make the findings, and I'll repeat them, that it was a group of 3 or more. You put a whole lot of other people in harm's way in addition to the guy that you killed. One of them was struck by a bullet, and there were children, and loads of folks that deserve to be nowhere close to any of this that you were involved in. So, taking that all into account, and taking into account your age, I've arrived at the following. Sir, you've entered a plea guilty to murder in the 2nd degree. You've You've also entered a plea of guilty to assault in the second degree. You've told me enough for me to believe you are guilty of those offenses, so I accept your plea of guilty. I adjudicate you guilty on both of those crimes. And starting with count 1, murder in the second degree, I sentence you to custody of the Commissioner of Corrections for a period of 367 months. Against that sentence, you are entitled to credit for 524 days. Restitution is reserved for 45 days. $50 fine, $75 surcharge, and $3 law library fee to be taken from prison earnings. You may never possess, use, transport firearms or ammunition or explosives for the remainder of your life. If you have not already done so, you must provide a DNA sample. As to the second degree assault, that person has suffered a real harm in this. And I do not take a moment away from anything that the family of the deceased has told me. But I acknowledge at the same time that poor person had nothing to do with any of this and still took a bullet. So as to that sentence, I sentence you to the custody of the Commissioner of Corrections for a period of 6 months as provided by law. What I am doing today, however, I'll be frank, it is acknowledging your age, is making that sentence concurrent. So your sentence is 30 years and 7 months. No. So that is to be executed forthwith. Is there anything else for the restitution? Please stay. I did. Thank you. Thank you. This here. Thank you, Your Honor.
DeMarquis Elkins. On March 21, 2013, in Brunswick, Georgia, 17-year-old DeMarquis Elkins approached Sherry West, who was walking with her 13-month-old son, Antonio Santiago, in a stroller. After demanding money and being told she had none, Elkins pulled out a handgun and fired a warning shot. He then turned the weapon on Sherry, shooting her in the leg and grazing her head. In a moment that left the community and, later, the courtroom in shock, he walked to the stroller and shot baby Antonio in the face, killing him instantly. The case quickly drew national attention. At trial, Sherry West's testimony gripped the jury. She recounted how Elkins asked if she wanted him to shoot her baby, and how she pleaded for Antonio's life before he pulled the trigger. Elkins was arrested later that same day. His mother and sister were also charged for helping him hide the weapon. In court, jurors wept as they heard Sherry West's anguished words, and prosecutors played audio recounting the attack. On August 30th, 2013, a jury found DeMarquis Elkins guilty on multiple counts, including malice murder, felony murder, aggravated assault, cruelty to children, and possession of a firearm. 2 years later, on February 12, 2015, Elkins was sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole. During sentencing, he showed no emotion and offered no words of apology. For Antonio's family, the verdict brought some measure of justice, but no sentence could erase the loss of a child. Elkins remains incarcerated, serving life without parole.
Tell us your name and spell it out for our court reporter, please.
Yes, Jennifer, Jennifer. Last name is Krauss, Krauss.
All right, Ms. Krauss, were you working as a registered nurse on March 21st of this year?
Yes, ma'am.
And did you treat a woman named Sherry West that morning? And did she tell you how she was injured?
Yes, ma'am.
What did she tell you?
She told me that she was shot. She said that she was walking down the road and she just said, they shot my baby and they shot me.
You remember writing what was called an adult assessment that morning about Sherry West, your ER notes from treating her?
I did write one. I don't remember exactly what it says. Ask me the question again.
What did Sherry West tell you as far as how she was injured based on the notes in your report?
Objection sustained. You have to, that report, you read the report, if it refreshes your memory, okay, answer the question. You have to answer the question not from the report, but from your own recollection. So if that refreshes your own recollection, that's good, okay?
Yes. She did tell me I spent about 3.5 hours with her, so we kept, it was a continual conversation about what she had done that morning, and that she was walking home from the post office, and the baby was asleep in the stroller. She said 2 people walked up to her, 2 young boys walked up to her. She said she wasn't very concerned with it because she thought they were just coming to look at the baby. She's like, I thought that somebody was just going to come up and tell me how cute he was, and then they proceeded to ask for her money and her purse. She says, I don't have any money. I don't have anything in here. And they proceeded to shoot her, she said, in her leg. They asked again for the money. She said, I don't have any money. And that's when they shot him, the baby.
Recall her stating that a young child came up to her wanting her money?
Yes, she made the comment that her exact words that day were, they should have been in school.
They should have been, as in?
They should have been in school. They were too young to be outside just roaming the streets at that time of day.
Ms. Krause, what was Sherry West's demeanor when you saw her that day in the hospital?
She was very distressed. When she came in, she was, they shot my baby, where is he, what's going on? She didn't know anything when she got there. She was very upset. And then I was in the room with her when the detective came in, and we decided to let. When she came in, she was, they shot my baby, where is he, what's going on? She didn't know anything when she got there. She was very upset. And then I was in the room with her when the detective came in, and we decided to let her know. They shot my baby, where I was in the room with her when the detective came in, and we decided to let that. Just started crying and sobbing, and she was very upset.
Was she given any kind of medication for pain relief at the hospital while she was there for the wound in her leg?
I'm not 100% positive about that.
Okay.
She didn't tell me who shot the child, but she did mention that someone had shot the child.
You recall writing a trip report that morning for your treatment of Sherry West?
Yes.
Would seeing that report refresh your memory as to what she said that morning? Would seeing your report refresh your memory as to what you said that morning?
I have memories.
Your Honor, he's not testifying he's having any problems remembering. He just testified that answered the question that she asked, and he's not indicating he's got any memory problems.
That said,
Pardon me, address it to the court,
that
please.
said he didn't know, she didn't say.
Ask your question again, if he can,
I said she didn't say who shot. She told me that somebody had shot. That's all she said.
Would seeing your report from that morning refresh your memory as to what she said as to who shot her?
He just testified from his memory. He doesn't need to see his report, Judge.
Is your memory better now
Yeah.
than it was on the morning of that shooting?
I'm telling you what she said. That's what she said. Somebody had shot her. She didn't say who shot her.
She didn't say who, she just said someone shot her. Is that,
Someone.
I understand what your answer is?
Someone.
Okay.
She didn't say who.
All right, thank you, sir. I think you already did a little earlier, but can you say your name for the jury and then spell it out for our court reporter?
Raymond Marat. It's RAYMOND-MARAT.
Were you working as a paramedic or EMT on the morning of March 21st,
Yes, ma'am.
2013?
Yes, ma'am.
And did you respond to a shooting at 708 London Street that morning?
Yes, ma'am.
A woman later identified as Sherry West.
I didn't treat her. I walked up to her to talk to her.
Continue your answer.
I arrived on location, and at one point I walked up to her to see if I could offer aid before my other squad got there. And right as I approached her and asked her a question, then the other ambulance showed up.
Okay. Did she make any statements in your presence about how she was injured or how her child was shot?
Yes, she did. She stated they shot my baby.
That they shot my baby?
Yes, ma'am.
Do you remember writing a report that morning?
Yes, ma'am.
Do you recall reporting any statements about Sherry West and what she said that morning?
I refer to my report.
He's already testified to what she said. Why does he need to refer to his report?
Right, the law is you have to testify from your own recollection.
Oh, okay.
Okay, and you can refer to your report if you don't remember, okay? And if it will help you refresh your recollection. You can't testify from your report, but if it refreshes, if you need to, you're certainly allowed to look at that and refresh your recollection. But then you have to testify for what you remember
Yes,
that morning, okay?
Well, she made reference that she's walking down the street with her baby, and she was approached and her baby was shot.
You remember a recording this evening that said mother was walking down the
Your Honor,
street?
she's now reading from a report that's not in evidence. She's got a witness on the record.
Repeat your last answer, sir.
I'm sorry, ma'am?
Repeat your last answer.
She made reference that she's walking down the street with her baby, and he approached her and shot her baby.
Describe who this he was.
No, she didn't know.
Juan Carlos Thorpe,
Where are you currently employed?
City of Brunswick, Brunswick Police Department.
And how long have you worked for the city of Brunswick?
Excuse me?
I'm sorry. How long have you worked for the city of Brunswick Police Department?
22 years.
22 years.
Yes, sir.
Did you have occasion to respond on March 21st to the shooting of a young child?
Yes, I did.
Do you recall whether you were still on duty at approximately 18:45 hours, 6:45 p.m. on March 21st?
Yes, sir, I was.
Do you recall whether anyone approached you at that time?
Yes, sir.
What was the name of the individual that approached you?
Aldre Brooks.
He also known as Argy Brooks?
That's how you pronounce it, yes, sir.
Oh, well, I believe it's A-R-G-I-E, Brooks. I believe Officer Thorpe spells it A-L-G-R-E, Brooks.
Yes, sir.
And I guess only Mr. Brooks knows how it's actually supposed to be spelled. Sir, when Mr. Brooks approached you, was he in a car?
No, sir.
How did he approach you?
On a bicycle with no seat.
Is that an adult bicycle or a child bicycle?
Appeared to be a child bike. It was small.
Indicated that there was no seat.
Yes, there was no seat on the bike.
Did Mr. Brooks appear to be under the influence of alcohol or drugs?
To me, he did. Yes, sir.
Can you describe his appearance and presentation to you at that time? I'm not questioning your observation. I'm just asking you to articulate for the jury why that appeared to be the case to you.
Well, when he came up to me, he was spewing saliva from his mouth, and he was kind of skittish, and when other people would walk by, he would clam up and wouldn't want to talk. And he just, to me, appeared to be high on something or alcohol.
Mr. Brooks stated that he needed money.
Yes, sir.
I don't want to cut you off. Okay.
I was talking to my co-counsel.
We may. Did he tell you what he wanted the money for?
Judge, hearsay, Your Honor.
Your Honor, it's not a leading question. That's a yes or no question. That's not.
But objection was
He asked him, did he tell you what he wanted the money for? That calls for a hearsay response, Your Honor.
That's the hearsay sustained.
Your Honor, Mr. Brooks is about to testify. Well, Your Honor, I have no further questions for you, Mr. Thorpe. But we'll keep him on standby. We'll recall.
Do we have any questions for Ms. Brackenway?
Jarvis, please state your full name for the record.
My full name is Francis Thomas Jarvis, but I go by the nickname of Jay.
Very well. Mr. Jarvis, where do you live? What part of town do you live?
Well, I live just outside of Rome, Georgia.
Born in Georgia?
No, sir, I wasn't. I think my accent probably gives that away.
Well, where were you born?
I was born in Long Island, New York.
Very well. Did you attend college?
Yes, sir, I did.
Where did you attend college?
I received my undergraduate degree from Georgia College in Milledgeville in 1978. Then went on to the University of Pittsburgh, where I received a master's degree in forensic chemistry in 1979.
Is that an MS?
Yes,
Master
sir.
of Science?
Master of Science, that's correct.
Did you subsequently obtain another degree?
I also received a degree, a master's in public administration from Georgia State University, I believe in 2006 or 7, can't remember.
Is that Columbus State University?
Did I say Georgia? I'm sorry, it was Columbus State University in Columbus.
Did you subsequently perform an internship?
Following my, as a part of my graduate studies at the University of Pittsburgh, I did internship at the Allegheny County Crime Laboratory, which is located in Pittsburgh.
And where have you held any positions in the scientific field?
Yes, for approximately 32 years, I was employed at the Georgia State Crime Laboratory. I worked both here in the Atlanta office. I also worked in the laboratory in Macon, as well as a Northwest Georgia laboratory that was located in Somerville.
You started with the GBI in what year?
In September of 1979.
You retired in what year?
I retired June the 1st, 2011.
We stipulate
That's a stipulation, Mr. Garland?
There you are.
Okay. I was an expert. I can give opinion. That's me thereof.
Mr. Jarvis, have we met before?
Not prior to right now, no, sir.
All right. But we have communicated by phone?
Yes, we have.
Were you retained by the defense, Mr. Elkins, to look at some of the evidence in the State v. Elkins case?
Yes, I was.
And were various items of evidence sent to you for your review?
There were documents sent to me, and then I actually physically went to the crime laboratory located in Savannah to examine other items of physical evidence.
So in addition to reviewing documents related to the case, you actually physically went to the crime lab yourself?
Yes, sir, I did.
And you actually physically reviewed the evidence, physical evidence, the bullets, shell casings, gunshot residue kits, everything at the crime lab in this case?
Yes, sir, I did.
Were you asked to, well, before I get there, do you know Brian Leffert?
Yes, I do.
How long have you known Brian Leffert?
I've known Brian since he was first hired, and I'm not sure what day that was, but you know, it's a small community of people that do firearms and ballistics work in the state, so everybody knows everyone.
And you were specifically asked to review his reports?
That's correct.
Okay. Do you recall the nature of, or the kind of weapon involved, held in evidence in this case?
Yes, it was a RG Model 14 22 caliber revolver.
Okay. Does that gun fall in a class of weapons that has a special nickname?
It's commonly referred to as a Saturday Night Special, which is an inexpensive, cheaply made firearm that usually sells for less than $100.
All right. Do you recall being asked to review the available data as to how many of those weapons were manufactured?
Yes, sir, I do.
All right. How many of those weapons were manufactured?
Of that particular model, there were over 800,000 of that particular model manufactured.
Now, Agent Leffert, in his report, identified several manufacturers of similar guns.
That's correct.
And similar, I'm sorry, it's not truly a scientific phrase. When you're examining firearms, can you explain to the jury what it is that you're looking for?
Certainly. In order for a firearm to fire a bullet and for the bullet to travel in a straight line and for the firearm to be accurate, the bullets have to have a gyroscopic spin as they come out of the end of the barrel. If you can if I can use this as an example, when you think about a football being thrown, in order for a quarterback to throw a football in an accurate manner, he has to impart a spin to the ball when he throws it. Otherwise, it will tend to just tumble through the air instead of firing in an accurate manner. And the same holds true for a bullet. If the bullet is not spinning about its axis when it comes out of the barrel, it tends to tumble, and it won't fly in a straight line, and the firearm is not accurate. So in order to cause that bullet to have a spin about it, the manufacturers of the firearm barrels create what's known as rifling. And what rifling is a series of ridges that are inside the barrel that are left in there, and the process is done so as the bullet engages these raised ridges, it will impart a spin to the bullet, so when it actually comes out of the end of the barrel, it's spinning about its axis, and that allows it to fly in a straight direction. Well, different manufacturers utilize processes that put different numbers of lands and grooves, and it's the raised areas, the raised ridges in the barrel that actually grip the bullet and impart the spin to it. So you may have one manufacturer that may put 4 or 5 lands and grooves, and you may have one that may put as many as 20. It's kind of a manufacturer's preference.
The revolver that you examined at the Georgia Crime Lab, how many lands or grooves did it have?
That particular model has 8 lands and grooves.
And what does it mean to say that the barrel has a twist to it? I mean, they're all straight in one sense.
Yes, but when the grooves are cut in or formed in the barrel, the tool has to be rotating as that forming process is done, and that's what allows the bullet, when it engages with the rifling, to begin to turn. So some manufacturers, very few, use a left-hand direction of twist, but the majority of them use a right-hand twist.
All right. And this particular revolver was in the majority that used the right-hand twist?
Yes, sir, that's correct.
Now, we've all watched CSI and other shows on television. Is it always possible to tie a particular gun to a particular spent bullet? Is that always possible?
No, it's not always possible, no, sir.
In fact, it's often not possible.
Well, I would say it's, I don't know that I would use the word often, but it happens more frequently than you probably would believe.
And for some calibers, some kinds of firearms, it happens more commonly than with others.
That's true, and also with certain types of weapons, it happens more frequently.
And in this case, having reviewed the items, I think they were, as referenced in the crime lab report, you examined how many bullets?
A total of 2 fired .22 caliber lead bullets.
And the condition of those bullets was not ideal?
They were not ideal. It was easy to discern that the bullets were .22 caliber, but approximately half of the bearing surface that bears the markings that we would use to make a comparison were unsuitable for comparison.
So beyond looking at the twist of the grooves, the twist of the lands and marks and their number, did you really have any other basis to make comparison with the evidence available?
No, sir.
And on that basis, were you asked to go back and look at the manufacturers that may have manufactured guns fitting these characteristics?
Yes, I was.
All right. Now, in addition to those identified by Mr. Leopard, you were able to identify several more, were you not?
Yes, I put together what I would say was a more comprehensive list of firearms that were produced that had rifling that was similar to what I observed on the bullet.
Can you identify those manufacturers, Gary?
I certainly can. 22 caliber revolvers that have the same 8 lands and grooves with a right-hand twist include the RG, which is what I examined, Arminius, Burgo, North American Arms, Herbert Schmidt, Hawes, Valor, EIG, which is spelled EIG, Kimmel, Gekado, Liberty, Dixon, PIC, Bison, FabArm, and High School. There are...
Hold on a second.
Okay.
Those manufacturers, all of those manufacturers manufactured revolvers or just handguns?
These were all just, these are just the revolvers that have the same rifling.
In 22 caliber?
Correct.
Now, are there other weapons that also fire 22 caliber long rifle rounds with the same number of grooves and the same twist?
Yes, there are two manufacturers of Derringers, the RG, which is the same manufacturer of the weapon that I examined, and also American Firearms. And then there's also several rifles that include Mossberg, Revelation, Western Field, Cooey, Lakefield Arms, Etonia, and Lithgow. And then there were 2 pistols, the Orson and Intratec, that also have the same type of rifling.
All right. Do you have an opinion as to how many weapons, how many 22 caliber revolvers were manufactured that have the same characteristics in terms of groove and twist?
Well, just based on the fact that the RG-14 model had over 800,000 that I'm aware of manufactured, I would estimate that given all the other manufacturers that I named off, I would guess that it would have to be in the, at least a couple of million.
Well, to be fair, let me rephrase the question.
Markeith Lloyd. Markeith Lloyd's story is one marked by violence, evasion, and a chilling disregard for human life. Lloyd, already on the run from the police after murdering his pregnant ex-girlfriend, would go on to commit an even more shocking crime that would capture the attention of the nation and end in a courtroom battle that would determine his fate. After the brutal murder of his ex-girlfriend, Lloyd went into hiding, but his escape would not last long. A month later, he was spotted at a Walmart in Orlando. Moments later, Lieutenant Clayton, a seasoned officer known for her dedication to the force, arrived at the store. Surveillance footage showed Lloyd and Clayton crossing paths, but this encounter would quickly escalate into a violent confrontation. As Lieutenant Clayton attempted to arrest Lloyd, a shootout ensued. The scene was chaotic and tragic, and Lieutenant Clayton was struck 4 times, ultimately losing her life in the exchange. The murder of Lieutenant Clayton set off a massive manhunt for Lloyd, lasting 9 days. The police search was intense, and when Lloyd was eventually captured, he tried to flee, but in the process, he lost his left eye in the altercation. In court, Markeith Lloyd took the stand in his defense, claiming that he had been acting out of fear and self-preservation. Despite his attempts to justify his actions, the jury found him guilty of first-degree murder, and it was time for the victim's family to speak about the impact of the loss of their loved one. Lieutenant Clayton's sister, in an emotional statement, gave her thoughts on the devastation caused by Lloyd's actions. The jury unanimously recommended the death sentence for Markeith Lloyd. His reaction to the verdict was one of defiance, but there was no remorse in his words or actions. As the sentence was handed down, Lloyd seemed to mouth something, his emotions still hidden behind a mask of indifference. Moments later, he exploded in a burst of anger, shouting at those in the courtroom. Despite his outburst, the judge remained resolute, agreeing with the jury's recommendation for the death penalty. Lloyd was sentenced to death, and he now sits behind bars, awaiting the day when his sentence will be carried out. On December 20th, 2024, a tragic event unfolded in the parking garage of an apartment complex in Miami's Liberty City neighborhood. Joaquim Lawler, a young man full of life, was fatally stabbed. The person present at the scene was none other than his ex-girlfriend, Giara Malik. The two had been in the midst of what Malik described as horseplaying, but the situation quickly escalated into a fatal act of violence. Malik's version of events was that the stabbing occurred accidentally while they were playing around, and she immediately called 911. She stayed by Lawler's side as he succumbed to his injuries, waiting for authorities to arrive. However, surveillance footage from the scene revealed something more chilling. Malik was seen dropping a knife near Lawler's lifeless body. He was discovered on the 3rd floor of the parking garage with a single stab wound, his life tragically cut short. Lawler's family, devastated by the loss, took to social media, sharing their grief and demanding justice for their beloved son. Initially, there were no arrests, which sparked outrage among Lawler's family and the community. Over a month passed before Malik was arrested and charged with manslaughter as an adult on January 28, 2025. The delay in her arrest only added to the tension, but Malik's defense argued that the incident was an unfortunate accident. Despite the serious charge, she was granted release on a $50,000 bond with GPS monitoring. Her attorney further argued for the removal of the GPS monitoring device, citing that it carried a negative connotation for Malik, especially as a student. However, Lawler's mother was vehemently opposed to this decision, expressing that it was deeply insulting. In response to the victim's family's objections, the state moved for a pretrial detention hearing, which took place on February 6th, 2025. During the hearing, prosecutors presented evidence suggesting that Malik posed a risk to the community, citing a prior school fight and harmful text messages she had sent in the past. As a result, the judge ordered that she be placed under Level 1 house arrest, allowing her to leave only for school and meetings with her attorney. Despite the ruling, Lawler's family remained dissatisfied, pushing for Malik to be jailed until the trial. "We don't feel justice has been served yet," said one family member. As the trial date looms, scheduled for May 5th, 2025, the tension surrounding the case only grows, leaving the community waiting for a resolution to this tragic and complicated situation. In 2022, a tragic case of mistaken identity led to the senseless killing of 27-year-old Kayla Montano in a gas station parking lot near Interstate 25 and Comanche Road. Adam Cedillo, along with 2 accomplices, opened fire, spraying approximately 30 rounds at an SUV. Kayla, who was inside the vehicle, was killed in the barrage of bullets. The tragic twist? The shooting was the result of a horrific mistake. 2 girls had falsely told the shooters that someone in the SUV had robbed them, leading to the deadly attack. Cedillo, after being arrested and facing the consequences of his actions, pled guilty to first-degree murder. His plea was part of a deal that ultimately saw him sentenced to 10 years in the Department of Corrections. The case was tragic, not only because of the loss of life, but because of the profound impact it had on Kayla's family, who now had to navigate a world without her. During the sentencing, Montano's family had the painful task of addressing the court. They spoke of Kayla's bright future, one that was taken far too soon. The family's heartbreak was palpable as they described how Kayla's life, full of hope and promise, was ripped away in an instant. Cedillo's sentence of 10 years is part of his plea deal, but the pain left behind by his actions is something that cannot be erased. On June 21, 2022, James Sanchez's life was tragically cut short in a shooting at Black Horse HOA Park in Catalina, Arizona. Sanchez had arranged to meet with a group of individuals to sell THC vape cartridges. What was meant to be a routine deal quickly turned into a deadly encounter, marking the culmination of a robbery plot that would cost Sanchez his life. Surveillance footage captured the moment when Joseph Nolan, his brother Drake, Paul Rodriguez, William Marley, and Richard Miller entered the park, some masked and armed. The footage shows the group approaching Sanchez, who was with a friend at the time, and after a brief exchange, shots rang out. Sanchez was struck, and despite being rushed to the hospital, he succumbed to his injuries 2 days later. The investigation revealed chilling details about the motives behind the shooting. Text messages and evidence found in Sanchez's backpack, including the vape cartridges, pointed to a planned robbery. The group, including Nolan, had intended to steal from Sanchez, but the deal went wrong when the situation escalated into violence. Nolan, facing charges of first-degree murder and aggravated assault, claimed that he acted in self-defense. He stated that he feared for his life after seeing an AR-15 pointed at him and his brother. However, the prosecution argued that the group's true intent was robbery, and the use of deadly force was an act of premeditated violence rather than self-defense. During court proceedings, Nolan's defense tried to argue that the situation was a misunderstanding, and in a courtroom exchange, Nolan was questioned about his actions. Nolan's response was calm, claiming, "He was joking. I 100% did not take him seriously." Despite his defense, Nolan was convicted of multiple charges, including murder, but he was acquitted of armed robbery. His sentence was harsh, life in prison without the possibility of parole. His brother Drake and Richard Miller were also sentenced, while Paul Rodriguez and William Marley are still awaiting trial. April 1996, Sparta, Michigan, was shaken by the horrifying murder of David Crawford, a crime that would leave a community haunted for decades. Federico Kiko Cruz, the man behind the crime, committed an act of unspeakable violence that shocked everyone who knew him. What made the case even more chilling was that Cruz recorded himself after the murder, capturing the disturbing aftermath in a chilling, self-made video. Police described the crime as bizarre, though they couldn't immediately categorize it. "I don't know if I'd call it ritualistic or satanic at this stage of the game, but it was bizarre to say the least," one officer stated. The scene left authorities and the community in disbelief. The motive behind the crime was unclear, but the brutal nature of Cruz's actions, compounded by his lack of remorse, made the case one of Michigan's most infamous. In 1997, Cruz was convicted of first-degree murder and sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole. However, this sentence was soon to be challenged. In 2012, the U.S. Supreme Court ruled that mandatory life sentences for juveniles were unconstitutional, a decision that ultimately paved the way for Cruz's sentence to be reconsidered. Cruz, who was just 16 years old at the time of the murder, had committed a horrific crime. But the courts had to address the issue of sentencing juveniles to life without the possibility of parole. After serving 27 years in prison, Cruz's life sentence was reconsidered, and in August 2023, he was granted parole. His release, set for March 2025, has sparked outrage in the community. Many people, including those who were directly affected by the crime, believe that Cruz's release is a grave mistake. In April 2012, a quiet night in Farmington Hills, Michigan, would be shattered by a brutal and senseless act of violence. Mitchell Young, 21, and his friend Tucker Cipriano embarked on a home invasion that would result in a tragic loss of life. Their target was none other than Tucker's own family. Armed with bats, the two men broke into the Cipriano household in the middle of the night. Inside were Tucker's father, Robert, his mother, Rose, and his younger brother, Salvatore. What followed was a violent and merciless attack. Robert was killed, while Rose and Salvatore were critically injured, but managed to survive. The assault was swift and brutal, leaving a family torn apart and a community in disbelief. As the investigation unfolded, it became clear that Young and Cipriano had planned to rob Tucker's family. Evidence showed that the two had discussed the robbery beforehand, with Young and Cipriano purchasing synthetic marijuana and practicing swinging the bats. The brutal nature of the crime, coupled with the fact that it was committed against a family member, left everyone involved reeling. During the investigation, Cipriano spoke to the police about the events leading up to the attack. His account described how, after breaking into the house, the family dog had alerted the occupants, leading Robert to come downstairs. Tucker described a fight breaking out between his father and the intruders, and how Young hit Robert repeatedly with the baseball bat. The autopsy later confirmed the severity of Robert's injuries, showing multiple fractures to his skull caused by blunt force trauma. Both Young and Cipriano were arrested shortly after the crime. In 2013, Cipriano pled no contest to first-degree murder, acknowledging his role in the crime and accepting responsibility for his actions. Cipriano's sentence was life in prison without the possibility of parole, marking the end of a tragic chapter for both the Cipriano family and the perpetrators. Meanwhile, Mitchell Young maintained his innocence despite the overwhelming evidence against him. At his sentencing, Young expressed remorse for the pain caused to the Cipriano family, but continued to insist that he was wrongfully convicted. He also criticized his defense attorney for what he perceived as inadequate representation during the trial. However, Judge Shalina Kumar was unsympathetic to Young's claims, emphasizing that despite his troubled upbringing, he was fully capable of understanding right from wrong. In the end, Mitchell Young was sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole. The court also imposed additional sentences for assault and robbery charges. In March 2020, a tragic incident occurred on Middlebridge Road in South Kingstown, Rhode Island, forever altering the lives of a family and leaving a community in grief. Kara Kenyon, a 33-year-old physical therapist, drove under the influence and struck 54-year-old Alan Albergaria, who was walking along the road. The impact was fatal. Kenyon remained at the scene and was arrested that night, but the damage had been done. Albergaria, a beloved father, grandfather, and husband, had his life abruptly taken. His family was left devastated by the loss, spending nearly 3 years grappling with their grief as they waited for the case to move forward. A man lost his life, a family lost their center, and a woman's life took a dark turn from which there was no easy return, summed up the weight of the tragedy. At the court proceedings, Alan's daughter, Cassandra Phillips, addressed the court, her voice trembling with emotion. She described the overwhelming grief that had consumed her since that fateful night. She recalled how her father's sudden death turned her life upside down. Cassandra shared the personal anguish of losing her father at a crucial moment in her life. As a new mother, the void left by Alan's death made her journey even more painful. Alan's wife also shared her devastating experience. During the pandemic, they had bonded over simple joys like doing puzzles and cooking together. But that was shattered when she found her husband lying in the street, covered in blood. The family was left to carry the heavy burden of grief, compounded by the violent and senseless nature of the incident. On January 23, 2023, Kenyon stood before a judge and offered a tearful apology, expressing deep remorse for the pain she had caused. She expressed that every day since the tragedy, she had thought of the family's grief. Kenyon accepted full responsibility for the crime, admitting that her decision to drive while under the influence was uncharacteristic of her, but that there was no excuse for it. She pledged to support safety changes in auto safety features and to advocate for mental health awareness, understanding that her actions had irreparably altered many lives. Despite her apology and remorse, Kenyon was sentenced to 15 years in prison, with 7 years to serve and the remainder suspended with probation.